Now to our Decision 2026 coverage and a turnaround in the race for LA mayor. Tonight, Nithya Raman surpassing Spencer Pratt in the ballot count, but the margin is still small and the race still too close to call.
The latest ballot drop happened around 5 tonight. It put Raman in second place, trailing Mayor Karen Bass. Raman's lead over Pratt is narrow, just 3,100 votes separating them.
The governor's race also too close to call tonight. Javier Becerra maintaining his lead over Steve Hilton tonight. Steyer still trailing in third. NBC4's Conan Nolan continues to watch these races closely. He joins us tonight. You've been talking about this possibility for days. Are you surprised?
No, not after the first drop on Wednesday. That's because Nithya Raman was starting to make headway in each one of these. Now, remember, we started to see it the day after the election when the massive number of mail-in ballots started to be counted. It was clear those votes came mostly from Democrats, and that was bad news for the conservative candidate in the race, Spencer Pratt.
She had been eating into his lead ever since election night, with the LA County Registrar's Office slowly processing and then counting millions of mail-in ballots. And with today's number drop, LA mayoral candidate Nithya Raman has overtaken Spencer Pratt in the race for the coveted second-place finish for a runoff spot against incumbent Karen Bass. Raman, in a statement, writing, "We are encouraged by the latest vote count and remain grateful to the thousands of Angelenos who have powered this campaign." But the development is sure to outrage many of Mr. Pratt's supporters. The former reality show star has received national attention for his renegade campaign, which has included the support of President Donald Trump, who perhaps not coincidentally today called the vote in California a fraud and was so incensed he stormed out of his interview with NBC's Kristen Welker.
It's 4 days. And they aren't even close to coming up with it. You know why they're doing that? Because they're cheating on the election.
Do you have evidence to support
all I have to do is look. All I have to do is look.
That's not evidence.
And I listen. And I listen to people. And let's see what happens.
But, sir, that's not evidence.
Do you think it's appropriate?
That's how they count the votes in California.
Do you think it's appropriate? Let's call it quits because I've had enough. Thank you, darling. Have a good time.
Mr. President, let's please. I traveled all the way to Wisconsin.
I've sat in the rain with you, and I've given you enough time.
Listen, we traveled all the way to Wisconsin for this interview.
Mr. Pratt today on X appeared to link the swing of 43,000 votes over the past week to one estimate of the homeless population in the city. This was the candidate the day prior to the election with NBC4's Robert Kovacic.
You will accept the results, win or lose.
Well, I do have multiple law firms here to make sure it's audited properly. But of course, I'll definitely accept my winning number.
The runoff position for Raman would alter the fall strategy considerably, with the incumbent mayor becoming the conservative in the race against a member of the Democratic Socialists of America. Bass spokesperson Alex Stack releasing a statement, "We look forward to winning a contest against an opponent who allows encampments near schools and fights against hiring more cops, yet is MIA on saving Hollywood jobs and fighting back when ICE invades LA." USC's Dan Schnurr.
Bass and her advisors believe that they know how to run against Pratt. They'll run the same campaign playbook against a conservative that they did against Rick Caruso 4 years ago. But if Raman does continue to pick up steam and end up in that second place finish, Bass has a much more complicated and a much more difficult challenge ahead of her.
Meanwhile, in the race for governor, Republican Steve Hilton remains in the second spot behind Democrat Javier Becerra. Billionaire Democrat Tom Steyer is slowly gaining ground, but Mr. Hilton says he's confident that he'll be in the runoff in November.
The president, Donald Trump, who said that there's fraud taking place. Are you alleging any fraud?
We've got teams looking at it. We've got teams of lawyers standing by. And so far, we haven't seen anything that suggests that we should move in that direction, no.
So he says there's no fraud. The president disagrees. Now, Mr. Steyer picked up 30,000 votes on Mr. Hilton, but still trails by 300,000 votes, but appears at this point to be an insurmountable lead for the Republican. Neither that race for the runoff spot nor the one for mayor of LA has been called yet by the decision desk at NBC News. They want to take another look at the vote drop tomorrow, but I tell you, Nithya Raman has had a good night each night since Tuesday. And although she seemed to concede in her speech, there are a lot of Democrats out there who are voting for her in greater numbers. You pointed this out, in greater numbers than they were voting for Karen Bass in these last several vote drops.
Yeah, she's not just outpacing Pratt right now. The numbers show she's also outpacing the incumbent, the mayor, right now. We have about 17% left of the vote to count. Is it too early to talk about a recount here?
Well, you know what? So in some counties, if it's between 0.5% or 1/4%, there's an automatic recount. There's no automatic recount in LA County, and there's no automatic recount based on state law. You can have a recount, you have to pay for it. Now, if it results in overturning the election, you get your money back. But it's for a county of Los Angeles, that would be a lot of money to pay for a recount if indeed you thought that there was something wrong with the process.
And then we'd be hearing more complaints. But we want to touch on this. You talked a little bit about it, too, Raman, overtaking Spencer Pratt, similar to Caruso and Bass in 2022. Yes or no?
Right. Well, for Rick Caruso, listen, he was she painted him as the Republican in the race. And this Republicans have a very small registration, what, 18%? In this case, Nithya Raman runs to her left. So that's going to be a little difficult, more difficult. And of course, there are those who, if it's a referendum on Karen Bass, but you don't like a Democratic Socialist of America, you still may vote for her because you want to send a message to the incumbent or you're just displeased. Listen, this is going to be an interesting race because we've never seen it before where we've had two Democrats running for mayor who agree on a lot of things. Remember, they were allies up until the point that they weren't. Karen Bass, I'm sure, felt absolutely betrayed by Nithya Raman getting into the race. But Raman ran a very good campaign that nobody kept an eye on, other than the people that ran her campaign. There were a lot of gatherings that she had in small groups throughout the city, and she portrayed herself to young Democrats as the instrument of change.
Politics is about perception at the end of the day. There are a lot of people, especially Pratt supporters, and Pratt himself, indicating the potential of fraud here. They're claiming fraud. The president, without evidence, claiming it as well. We know the LA U.S. Attorney's Office says that they're looking into potential fraud, asking if anybody's seen anything, let us know. What do we know about whether the U.S. Attorney's Office has talked to the Registrar's Office?
Well, what we understand is that the Registrar's Office has, Bill Asaley, the U.S. Attorney or the Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Central District, sent people in to check the voting, and the registrar welcomed them in. There's nothing to hide. You can see how we're doing it. And just like others, they show the process. We understand that the governor, Gavin Newsom, he's concerned enough that he's called a couple of registrars, including Dean Logan, saying, listen, speed up the count. What's going on here? And the registrars have said, listen, we can do that, but you need to give us more money because we don't have the money for overtime. They had factored in overtime for Saturday and Sunday count, but they're not counting overnight as they did in the 2020 election. So even the governor admits it is a bad look for California, and the rest of the country is wondering, maybe there's not fraud taking place, but why is it taking so long?
So why is it taking so long? Voters here might even be wondering why we don't have a better process.
Well, it's because when you ask people to vote by mail and you give everybody a ballot to vote, they send it in, and it's the U.S. Post Office becomes very much involved in this process. And if the USPS then sends all this in, from what we understand, there were ballots that arrived at the vote center days in advance, and they still weren't able to process them before Election Day. You're getting a notice on your phone saying your ballot's been processed. You mailed it in like 4 days before the election, but it's just now being counted. That's part of the problem. And remember, LA County, where 20% or close to 25% of all the ballots in California are cast, LA County is the largest voting district in the country. There's 10 million people, 6.5 million registered voters. It is an enormous task to, once the ballots come in, the dogs sniff them to make sure there's no anthrax or anything there. And then they open them one by one, fold them out, check the signature, make sure there's nothing impeding any marks in the ballot that would impede the machine when you count it. Finally, straighten it out, get it counted. It's for millions and millions of ballots that came in. It's a task.
We can't have both, right? Like, we want it to make sure that it's done right, but it takes time.
Right. I just wonder if you could count the mail-in vote prior, without releasing any of the numbers prior to Election Day. When the ballots close, you can start factoring in those numbers.
You would think. I tell you what's really going to change things, I think, is the U.S. Supreme Court will decide at the end of this month, at the beginning of next month, on a case in Mississippi that does what we do, and that they will allow votes to be counted after the election so long as they're postmarked by Election Day. And in the oral arguments in March, it was clear the Republican or the conservative majority said, you know what, Election Day is Election Day. That's what it says in the Constitution. Now, this is about federal cases, federal elections such as Congress, Senate, that kind of thing. But I'm sure state elections will have to be wrapped into this. So my guess is once that decision comes down, we will get to a point where, listen, you got to get your vote in by Election Day. If you mail it the day before and it arrives on Wednesday, not going to be counted.
I was trying to do the math. I wonder if ballots could still be in the mail and be coming in on Monday and Tuesday.
It's the USPS, man. Whether or not they get it in, they've got 7 days after Election Day to get it counted. Now, it's happened before. I mean, during the Civil War, they actually voted after the election on the battlefield. Captains were responsible for bringing in votes. In wartime, we've had soldiers overseas that cast ballots, and maybe they came in a day after the election. They still counted. So it's not unprecedented, but this is a state of 40 million people and 26 million registered voters. Sending a ballot to everyone and getting it counted in time, that's a task. That's not easy.
In some cases, LA's population alone is bigger than some entire states.
Yeah, 42 states.
There you go. Conan,
there you go.
Thank you as always.
My pleasure.
Appreciate you.